All right. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Kevin Berger with VMware Information Security. Today I'm going to be covering how we implemented Carbon Black throughout our organization in just under 3 months. A quick introduction to myself and my team and what we're responsible for. So again, Kevin Berger, Director of Security Engineering here at VMware. My team is responsible for several different aspects of the security portfolio, ultimately implementing security solutions, making sure that the security operations team is successful, both on the detection and prevention aspects of our security program. If I was to break our security down into a few different pillars, we focus on everything from endpoint security, so what we do at the endpoint for next-gen AV, EDR, data loss prevention, encryption, UEM, so how we manage devices as well. And then the other pillar is focused around network security. What we do for IDS, IPS, north-south traffic, as well as east-west monitoring, how we leverage solutions like NSXT and others. And then in addition to that, my team manages the log aggregation platform, as well as our SIM strategy and cloud security portfolio. Today I'm going to be focused obviously on endpoint security and how we were able to implement Carbon Black Cloud throughout the environment and replace our existing solution. So let me go ahead and dive right into it. First off, I want to just touch on VMware's vision. You know, within the security organization, we have to focus on ultimately the VMware vision and really accounting for any device, any application, and any cloud. So as we're evaluating security solutions and driving these initiatives, we need to make sure that the solution is scalable within this type of environment. Looking at mobile workloads, virtualized systems, desktops, VDI, laptops, as well as any application. You know, as we install security solutions and have controls around the security application layer, we want to make sure that we're accounting for that as we deploy these tools. And then any cloud, in regards to making sure that the solution is elastic, has the ability to be installed and do host-based monitoring across any cloud workloads, be it private, public, on-prem, off-prem, things of that nature. Next slide. This is just to cover real quickly the size and scale of the VMware environment. A lot of individuals don't understand really how large the VMware environment is and the problem that we have to solve here internally within the IT security organization at VMware. Today I'm going to be focused on looking at some of the challenges that we had, the size and scale again, looking at 169 offices that we had to account for. So as we were looking at various security solutions, making sure that it accounted for the scale of our environment. Was it able to protect all of these assets, all of these workloads? How did connectivity work within those devices? Did they need to phone home? Did they go to a SaaS-based instance? Things of that nature. Another interesting one for us was the average number of VMs created and destroyed on a weekly basis. This is something we need to account for because we have a very fluid environment internally. So as VMs are being created and destroyed, how are we protecting those assets? How are we ensuring that we have the appropriate level of controls and visibility throughout the organization, giving us a good security posture? And then looking at, another thing was devices managed by Workspace ONE UEM. This is something that we used throughout the deployment phase of the initiative, leveraging our UEM solution to actually achieve this goal. You can do this via, if you have a UEM solution already deployed within your organization, or if you're using something else for management, or there are other deployment techniques out there, and I'll dig into that here in a moment. So in regards to the actual Carbon Black Cloud suite that we were looking at, so we were, again, looking at Carbon Black Cloud, and we were focused in the upper right-hand corner on next-gen AV and the EDR component, so endpoint detect and response. So CB Defense or Endpoint Standard is the solutions that we were focused on, and then Enterprise EDR, which gave us all the log telemetry out of our devices. Some other things we were very excited about is the audit and remediation aspects of CB Cloud, giving us the ability to connect to live endpoints and identify and audit and remediate specific findings based on vulnerabilities, exploits, things like that, and rapidly respond to events. And I say again, being able to rapidly respond to events was a critical element for us. Outside of just doing traditional next-gen AV, being able to prevent the bad, and then also EDR, having the ability to actually respond to those and have an automated framework around that was critical to our success as well. Some interesting roadmap items that we're pretty excited about, things like device control, USB write protection. We're looking forward to being able to take advantage of that as part of our data loss prevention program. Other aspects are, vulnerability management coming. Workload visibility is actually pretty exciting as well. It's integrated with hypervisor and gives us really that application-aware security posture for endpoint security solution. And then we're really excited as well for Kubernetes and container security. If you saw on the previous slide, the number of containers we are building and destroying on a regular basis, it's good to have that level of visibility. Then app layer encryption. This is another critical element that we've got coming in 2021. So talking about our specific project for the Carbon Black Cloud deployment, we want to make sure we plan for success. And I'll kind of walk everyone through our challenges, how we got around those challenges, our deployment plan, how we kicked off the requirements gathering, how we got this throughout our organization. So first we wanted to agree on the problem statement. Ultimately what it comes down to is what problem are we trying to solve? Was it lack of visibility? Were you having issues with the performance impact on your user devices? Maybe you had a lack of automation response capabilities, meaning that every alert that the security operations team was seeing needed someone to manually intervene to take action against that alert or that malicious activity on your endpoints. So really understanding, what the problem is you're trying to solve, why you're actually looking at a new endpoint security solution, making sure that what you're looking for fits in with your needs and requirements. Okay. Then you want to identify a clear scope. Clear scope for the initiative, meaning, is it all laptops, desktops? Are you adding servers to this? What operating system are they running? Is it Mac and Windows? Do you have Linux devices out there? So make sure you clearly define the scope so that you have an achievable goal. For us, again, it was Windows, Mac systems, so all end user devices, plus all of our server infrastructure out there. Okay. You also want to make sure that you have a seamless replacement. So as you're looking at solutions, most likely you have a product that's already protecting your endpoints, be it either a native solution or a third-party tool out there. There is probably something that you're already going to be replacing for various reasons. You want to make sure that as you're doing this, you're introducing something that's going to be a seamless replacement. Obviously, with most individuals working from home these days, this is something that we needed to account for upon the kickoff of this project. We wanted to control user impact, and this was a critical element for us as well, making sure that as we were deploying the tool, we weren't introducing any sort of performance impact. And we also wanted to account for, either R&D or business or sales folks, making sure that we understood their needs from a performance perspective. They had the ability to actually deploy the solution or take advantage of the solution without it burdening them or becoming a performance hindering aspect for them. We also wanted to improve protection, and I'll get into that in a moment and kind of dive into some of the testing that we had done, but we ultimately wanted to make sure that we were putting ourselves in a better posture, either preventing zero-day attacks, preventing polymorphic malware, things of that nature. Wanted to make sure that the solution that we were deploying throughout the organization was actually getting us into a better place from a prevention perspective. Again, preventing the bad, but still allowing legitimate processes within the business. And then increased detection and retention. This was pretty important for us as well. As we were looking at the solution and deploying it, our previous tool only had 7 days of retention within the native UI, something that we were having challenges with. So we wanted to actually increase the detection and retention of the solution. Some interesting scenarios that we were going through, and I'll jump on these later on in the later slides. Right. So first we wanted to really gather requirements, and this was a critical aspect of the initiative. So we worked with the various lines of business and made sure that we had clear requirements. We worked with either the security operations team, so the SOC, we worked with our incident response team as well, looking at from a prevention perspective and detection. Were they getting all the alerts? Were they getting the logs? What were the requirements from a retention perspective? Do you need to forward those logs and those alerts onto your SIEM solution? Also working closely with the IT ops organization, looking at their requirements. What are their expectations from a performance perspective? So making sure that, and we spent a lot of time before we actually even began testing it, just gathering requirements. Depending on the type of solution that you're looking at and how far you want to go down with this, you can ultimately come up with 10, 50, 100 different requirements. And then from there, you want to define a weight for each requirement. What's the criticality? We had a 1 to 3 scale for all of the requirements that we gathered, so that we knew that, okay, maybe if a solution didn't meet a specific requirement, but it wasn't critical, it didn't influence our report too much. Then we wanted to publish a scoring matrix. We wanted to be very transparent with the business as we were evaluating these solutions, making sure that everyone was aware of our scoring and our point system. And I'll show a later slide with an example of how we were able to visually represent the testing that we had done based on the requirements that we had gathered from all the various individuals in the different lines of business. Another important aspect of this is to develop the RACI matrix. A company like VMware, 31,000 employees, 40,000 endpoints or so. We wanted to make sure that everyone had a clear understanding of their role on both the requirements gathering, the deployment, and the operational aspects of this initiative, making sure that everyone knew exactly what their role in it was. So then we wanted to engage with the stakeholders. We wanted to be very transparent. That was one of our key elements to success for this initiative, that we were engaging with the stakeholders. We were very transparent with them. Here's the testing that we had performed. Here's our feedback. Here's our results. Please sign off and validate that you've reviewed this information. We wanted to align on a RACI as well. RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consultant, Informed. So we didn't only want to verbally come to an agreement and understanding, we wanted to have a document that we could point to so everybody knew exactly what their role in this initiative was. And not just for deployment, again, for the operational aspects. And then we wanted to capture and assess functional and non-functional requirements. Ultimately, what that comes down to is functional being more operational, non-functional being long-term. So we wanted to make sure that we were focused on that as well. All right. So if I was to breaking the testing that we had done down into 3 different categories, starting off with OS compatibility. What operating systems are you using within your environment? Are you focused on Windows 10? What's the latest version of Mac that you need to support? Making sure that you look at all the various OS compatibility aspects of an initiative where you're going to be touching all the hosts and workloads throughout the environment. You have various Linux distros out there. What Linux flavors you need to support? And then from there, performance considerations. And we really broke this out into a few different areas. We're looking at things as simple as boot time performance. Upon the installation of various third-party solutions, especially security tools, there's going to be some level of impact, but you want to make sure that the solution is tuned so your users aren't actually experiencing any of that performance impact that may or may not be introduced. So we did a lot of testing just on boot time. And then from there, upon application launch, and really partnering with your business and looking at their day-to-day operational procedures. The business folks, maybe they're just launching Outlook and Microsoft apps and things of that nature. But if you have an R&D organization, as they're compiling code and they're doing things that are a little bit more taxing on the device, you want to make sure that you're accounting for that in the testing that you're doing, and making sure that you're getting that feedback and reporting the results and making that part of the testing that you're doing, so that upon deployment, you've already gone through a lot of the legwork. And then coming up with a deployment strategy. How are you going to roll this out? What's going to be the means or mechanism to do it? Are you going to add it to maybe a group policy or logon script? Are you going to add it to a system startup script? Another important aspect of this is understanding what you're going to do about base images and templates and systems that are already out in the environment. You want to make sure that at one point, when you kick off the deployment of the initiative, you want to stop the bleeding and make sure that newly provisioned systems have the appropriate security tools on them. So account for that as well. So again, deployment strategy could be, update images and templates, identify UAT testers, roll it out in phases, and I'll get into what we had done here at VMware in a moment. But really, you want to come up with a solid deployment strategy and set realistic expectations. In regards to prevention, so this was another key element of testing that we had done. Ultimately, what we did was we came up with several different test systems, installed Carbon Black and other various security solutions on them. So on one system, we would have, say, Carbon Black running. On the other one, we would have our other third-party security solution that we had currently. And we ultimately opened it up to the red team and had them test various types of exploits, using things like polymorphic malware, things of that nature. Don't need to dig into the details too much, but basically we worked very closely with our red team to do a series of tests from a prevention perspective to make sure that the solution was putting us in a better security posture upon the deployment, enablement, and removal of our previous tool. One thing that we really liked about Carbon Black as we were doing the testing is it does a great job of baselining normal activity within the environment, and then gives you a lot of tools out there by creating things like watch list items and whatnot to actually understand and learn your environment, where you can actually create these very carefully crafted policies to where you're actually allowing normal activity within your environment, even if your users or R&D individuals are doing things that aren't deemed best practice, but you can still allow that activity to occur while blocking unknown or malicious activity and actors. And then again, touching on this, but remember, R&D is different than sales. So we really broke our testing out into those business critical functions, working and partnering with the R&D organization, validating that we weren't impacting sales or marketing or legal, as we worked with them and began testing, making sure that the solution was working and wasn't causing any sort of issues or downtime. And then test configurations. We went through a pretty lengthy process in regards to just testing and validating, making sure that we were receiving the feedback and moving forward with the various testing that we were doing. So then you want to validate integrations. Important aspect of this was, in regards to secure log collection, we wanted to make sure that we were actually forwarding all the log telemetry to our SIM solution. So how are you going to do that? So Carbon Black actually has a Carbon Black event forwarder that we're able to take advantage of and forward all the information to our on-prem SIM solution, our log aggregation platform. We wanted to define a retention period. As I had previously mentioned, the thing that we liked about Carbon Black is by default, it has 30-day retention in the native UI. But then when you're forwarding data onto your SIM solution, what's going to be your retention needs for that data once it actually hits your log aggregation platform? And then figure out and define a retention strategy. So in regards to managing log data, this was an interesting one. And an example of this is we went through some testing with the security operations team and had them perform some normal activity on a device. And what we had them do was download an application. In this case, or in this example, they downloaded Notepad++. They ran the installer. They deleted a few files. They deleted the installer. And then they went and actually analyzed how much data was collected from that activity. On our previous solution, we only saw 41 events from that explicit example. So again, they downloaded an application, they installed it, deleted the files. Previous solution, 41 events. Carbon Black saw about 5,000 events. So Carbon Black was able to really capture all of the event data upon that activity, showing all the write to disk, all the new registry keys created, all the new executables and services that were launched upon the installation of an application, and deleting just a couple files. This was actually critical to us, especially with everyone working from home. We've really lost visibility from a network perimeter perspective. And really the main thing that we have on or for user visibility at this point is at the endpoint. So this was a critical aspect as we were looking at the solution to give us the ability to have assurance that we have more visibility as we're doing this deployment and displacement of our previous tool. One thing to think about in this though is more events isn't always a great thing, right? So we actually got to the point where we were managing the log data and filtering out some of the noise that we didn't deem relevant in the security investigation. So there is a robust feature within the Carbon Black Event Forwarder that gives you the ability to actually drop specific types of events, but you have the choice, right? And that's the main thing. Between our previous solution and with Carbon Black Cloud, the previous solution, filtered a lot of data off the bat by default, and we weren't really aware of what was being filtered, what was being sent to our log aggregation platform. With Carbon Black, it really is an unfiltered data set, but we have the choice in regards to what we're filtering. And then SOC UI adoption. You want to make sure operationally the SOC has a major understanding of the native UI. Now, for us, they're continuing to both use the traditional solution, so our SIM product here that we've operationalized, but then they've also become comfortable with the native Carbon Black Cloud UI and seen some of the advanced functionality, the enrichment, the integration with MITRE, things of that nature that we've been pretty excited about. So as they've matured their processes and experience within the platform, they become a lot more comfortable with some of the enrichment and the advanced features within the Carbon Black Cloud console. So these are just important aspects of the initiative, device coverage, SOC integrations, accounting for cloud and remote, and then deployment implementation plan is key. I'll touch on that stuff shortly. So this is an example. Once we did all the various tests within the environment, we took all of our requirements. I think for us, we trimmed it down to probably about 60 different requirements broken out between prevention, performance, and execution. So we took all those requirements, we summarized them on a report, and then we presented that information to the business. Now, this is just an example of a POC or of an engagement that we've done previously. It really has nothing to do with the Carbon Black initiative at all. But we want to show this as an example, just so you can visually represent the data to your lines of business, to your leadership, so they can really see that you've done your due diligence and testing. All right, so we wanted to publish a scoring matrix. We wanted to be very transparent with how we came to the conclusion in regards to this solution. Ultimately, it comes down to the data should speak for itself in regards to doing the testing, getting the feedback, validating requirements. And then from there, we obtain sign-off. I mean, ultimately, is what it comes down to is, this is the decision that we were making upon the deployment. This is why we made the decision. Then we move forward, we obtain sign-off from the lines of business. So that's ultimately what it comes down to for the requirements gathering portion, testing, and we like to call this either POC or POV phase, right? Proof of concept or proof of value. And so once you wrap that up, then you actually move forward with the purchase of license and the deployment. I'll get into our actual process on that. So now I'll touch on how VMware succeeded. I actually walk you through our specific process. So in regards to key challenges, ultimately what it comes down to is we use Workspace ONE, we stage the Carbon Black sensor in 7 days, and then we baseline the environment for 60 days. By baselining the environment, what I mean there is we enable the EDR component. So first we deployed Carbon Black using Workspace ONE, and by using Workspace ONE, you can actually stage the sensor by putting some arguments into the command line string, where you just stage the sensor in a bypass state. What that means is essentially the sensor is doing nothing. It's completely dormant on the device. For us, we are actually able to run our previous solutions side by side in addition to Carbon Black, and then methodically go through and enable EDR, still running the previous solution. And then we enabled EDR again, and this gave us the ability to learn our environment, baseline the policies. And then once we are comfortable with the policies that we identified within our environment, we began to methodically enable prevention and disable the previous solution. So we took a very phased approach. We weren't trying to just forklift and do a rip and replace. So it was a very methodical process. And part of the reason why we went this route is, one, we wanted to ensure that we had no lapse in coverage or visibility. There's always risk when you try and do a rip and replace scenario to where you can introduce lapse by inadvertently removing the other solution too soon from all of your devices, and then trying to rapidly get the new product out there. So we really wanted to take a very methodical approach to this to make sure that we had no lapse in coverage. In addition to that, we wanted to give our security operations teams and the incident response folks time to learn the product and see the events in the console from an EDR perspective before we completely remove the previous product. Okay. Again, we went through an extensive testing process, and it was focused primarily on prevention, detection, and performance. And this is really the crux of our testing. Again, partnering with the red team, giving them access to devices with Carbon Black Cloud installed and running. Did they actually see the log telemetry from the EDR component upon them doing actions when they connected to a device, launched an executable, see the running process, things of that nature? From a prevention perspective, was it blocking exploits that they were attempting within our organization? Again, from a detection perspective, were we seeing all the log telemetry, not only in the native UI, but also forwarding it to our SIEM solution? Were we able to see all the events? And then performance, and this was critical for us, especially with everyone working from home. We worked very closely with our help desk and the IT operations folks, making sure that we weren't impacting user productivity as we were going through this initiative. And then again, with most of our workforce at home, minimize colleague impact through tight collaboration amongst stakeholders. So ultimately, in summary for the initiative, we had 34,000 employees, mostly remote, systems protected. We actually experienced boot time performance improvements upon the implementation of Carbon Black Cloud, which was great to see. We also increased signal to noise ratio. And this goes down to some of the filtering that we applied at the Carbon Black event forwarder. And then we have a luxury, we have ongoing engagements with the Carbon Black product team, letting them know that this is how we operationalize it. This is what else we'd like to see in the product. Here's some opportunities out there. So we have very tight collaboration with the Carbon Black product team in regards to looking at some opportunities out there. Okay. So in regards to deployment strategy, you want to come up with some sort of time basis. What is your requirements in regards to actually deploying the solution throughout your organization, and why is there some sort of time constraint? Do you have a current renewal coming up for your currently existing solution within your environment? Are you displacing a product? For us, we are actually displacing a product on a specific time frame. So that's where we set our time goal. Have you had an incident and maybe you're trying to rapidly give yourself additional visibility onto devices throughout your environment? So come up with exactly what your time basis is, or your time scale for this initiative is. In regards to technology, the assumption being that you already have a solution out there that's giving you some aspects of this functionality, be it a legacy antivirus solution that only does signature-based detection, or other things of that nature. And then what's your process? Is it a silent installation? So again, ours, we use Workspace ONE to do a silent install, and we really wanted no user involvement. So no reboots, no prompts. Basically, success to us was, we don't want anyone to really know about this or see anything on their device, just day-to-day activity. And then again, understand the people that you're deploying this to. For us, we were definitely accounting for it being mostly a remote workforce. So other things that we were driving is we wanted to integrate this with our single sign-on provider for ease of authentication for our security operations team and our incident response folks. We integrated it with VIDM and Workspace ONE to make it very seamless for them to log on. We also wanted to focus on creating roles via RBAC, so role-based access control within the console. Who are the users that are going to be leveraging the solution, and what level of access do they need? Obviously, with any security solution, this gives individuals a high degree of access to devices in regard to the look at events, log telemetry, connect to devices. So you really want to look at the function that they're going to be performing within the Carbon Black Cloud, and make sure you're always going with least privilege. By no means do you want to be giving individuals more access than they need within the Carbon Black Cloud console, because of the amount of power that could give them. Okay. Training our people. So this was another key to success for us. One of the things is, we have obviously got access to the Carbon Black Cloud console several months before we completed the deployment. Now with that, we didn't want to train our security operations team or incident response folks too soon, because they wouldn't be able to operationalize the information that they had just learned. So we wanted to make sure we delivered training just in time. What we mean by that is we wanted it to be relevant to their day-to-day job so they can actually take action and leverage the training that they were using. Also taking advantage of some of the advanced features of Carbon Black Cloud, things like Rep CLI, live response for being able to connect to endpoints and actually do memory dumps, grab memory captures, and other types of actions. You can get copies of files, you can delete things. Ultimately, giving people the ability to actually perform some of these advanced functions. Another good resource that we had out there was the Carbon Black Academy, which is all self-paced training material that everyone has access to. And this was great and one of the keys to success for us. So for our phase enablement, again, we created the baseline, so the EDR. So this is where we learned our environment. So we deployed the solution in bypass, learned the environment, verified the rules that we had in place. So we verified the rules by creating little watch list items where if anything were to be blocked, we would get an alert for it. We wouldn't actually block the activity, but we would see the potential block, and then we would tune the rules accordingly. And then we enabled enterprise EDR for all of our UAT testers. So most organizations either have a UAT group. If not, you can definitely partner with different aspects of the business to make sure that you have individuals that are early adopters within this program to make sure that you're getting transparent feedback from them. And then create and monitor the watch list. I was mentioning this a moment ago. Ultimately, creating the watch list can give you kind of a dry run of your prevention policies within your environment to make sure when you do go into an enforcement mode, you're not essentially blocking anything within your environment. And then when we moved over to the NGAV, so Next Gen AV component, we already had a pretty solid set of policies and rules out there. And then we were able to enable enforcement, so Next Gen AV. And then we enabled enterprise EDR in phases. So first we began enabling enforcement on our UAT systems, and then we expanded the deployment or the enablement of EDR in phases on our devices. And then Next Gen AV followed right behind that. So we went through a 2-week process for each phase. So essentially, if you were a general user within our population, we enabled EDR and we had it there for about 2 weeks on your device. And then if there was 2 weeks of no alerts, no blocks on your system, then we went into active blocking. And then obviously we worked very closely with IT Ops, the help desk, and other lines of business to make sure that we weren't actually impacting user productivity. Once we complete the deployment and we had EDR Next Gen AV enabled globally, you essentially want to tidy things up. And what I mean by that is, you want to make sure you're removing the previous product, any residual items or anything like that, making sure that you remove the previous product from base images, templates, things of that nature. You want to partner with the SOC and the incident response teams, making sure that they're being successful. Ultimately, what it comes down to, they don't have any questions, issues, and things of that nature. And then in regards to communication, we were very transparent with the various lines of business in regards to the success of this initiative. So we gave all this feedback to the various organizations to make sure that they understood, the progress and when we were actually done with the project. And in summary, so planning and communication, training were key success. Again, very transparent with lines of business. We leveraged Workspace ONE extensively for the deployment and staging of the sensor. And then we replaced our previous solution in less than 3 months. This was a pretty aggressive schedule for a company with 31,000 employees, but something that we were successfully able to achieve. And then we significantly improved our security posture, and this is while everyone's working from home. And this is something that we were very excited about, is seeing more log telemetry, more event data within our SIM solution, and actually increasing the prevention capabilities as well by having these more tightly knit lockdown policies, but still allowing R&D and some of the high-powered users to perform their day-to-day operations. And then again, no user impact. That was a key element of our initiative as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate everyone joining today, and that's that.